There are moments when reality itself begins to whisper patterns too precise, to dismiss dreams too vivid, to forget coincidences that feel like fate unfolding. What if these aren't signs of losing your mind, but proof that your consciousness is evolving? Carl Jung discovered 5 profound experiences that mark the beginning of spiritual awakening phenomena, so specific that once you recognize them, you can never see life the same again. In this video, we'll uncover these signs one by one. But first, ask yourself, are you ready to face the truths your unconscious has been hiding? There is a moment in awakening that feels almost unbearable. You begin to notice the fabric of reality responding to you in ways that defy logic. It is not imagination, it is not delusion. It is what Carl Jung called synchronicity, and a causal connecting principle that reveals the universe is no longer indifferent but alive, whispering directly through the ordinary. Imagine this. You think of a friend you have not spoken to in years, and within minutes the phone rings. You wonder about a question haunting you, and a stranger casually mentions the exact answer as you walk by. Numbers repeat across clocks and receipts, until they no longer feel like chance but coded signals. A book falls from a shelf and opens to a page that speaks to your secret struggle. A song on the radio echoes the decision you have been too afraid to make. At first, these moments feel like magic tricks, delightful and strange, but then something changes. They begin to accumulate, appearing daily, even hourly, until you realize you are living in a dialogue with something far greater than yourself. This was Jung's shocking discovery. Synchronicities are not random. They are the universe becoming conscious of itself through you. And here lies the unsettling truth. You cannot control them. The instant you attempt to manufacture them or use them to feed your ego, they vanish. Synchronicity is not a tool. It is a mirror of your alignment with the self, what Jung described as your deepest inner truth. The more authentic you become, the clearer the patterns. The more you pretend, the silence returns. Consider the story of one of Jung's patients, a scientist who had lived his entire life in the strict world of cause and effect. After his awakening, he confessed, "I no longer live in a world of causality. I live in a world of meaning. Every event now feels like a conversation with reality itself." This is what only the awakened can understand. To perceive synchronicity is to recognize the unus mundus, the hidden unity underlying existence. But here is the burden. How do you tell another human being that reality itself is speaking to you? How do you explain that repeating numbers, falling books, or sudden songs are not hallucinations but messages? To most people, it sounds absurd, delusional, a projection of wishful thinking. They cannot see the pattern because their consciousness has not yet crossed the threshold. And this is why awakening often feels so lonely. Jung wrote, "The privilege of consciousness is also its burden." You see what others cannot, and this vision isolates you. Synchronicity becomes a private language, intimate, beautiful, but also isolating. It feels as if you have discovered a secret alphabet written across the fabric of the world, and yet no one else believes the letters exist. Here is the temporary result of this first sign of awakening. You are left straddling 2 worlds, one where events are meaningless accidents, and another where every accident reveals hidden design. This is not madness. This is metamorphosis. And once it begins, it cannot be undone. The lesson is profound. Awakening teaches you that reality is not mechanical, but relational. The world is not a dead machine, but a living intelligence, and synchronicity is its voice. Each coincidence that shakes you awake is not proof of insanity, but evidence that you have entered into dialogue with the self. So, I must ask you now, have you ever experienced moments so precise, so impossible to explain, that you felt the world itself was alive and aware of you? If so, do not dismiss them. They may be the first signs that your awakening has already begun. What happens when the world stops offering you simple answers? Awakening introduces you to a paradox so profound it shatters ordinary logic. Jung called this the transcendent function, a capacity that only emerges when consciousness has expanded beyond duality. It is the ability to hold two opposing truths at the same time, without needing to resolve them. This is not philosophy. It is lived reality. Imagine standing at your mother's funeral. Your heart breaks with grief, yet at the same moment you feel overwhelming gratitude for the gift of her life. Both are true, not one against the other, but fully simultaneous. For most minds, this contradiction would fracture them, but for the awakened, it becomes a bridge to a deeper dimension of consciousness. Jung described it as a collaboration between conscious and unconscious birthing, a third thing, not compromise, not balance, but a new creation that includes both truths yet transcends them. One of his patients captured it perfectly. It felt like my mind suddenly grew vast enough to hold everything. I could see the tragedy and the blessing, the darkness and the light, without collapsing into despair or denial. My mind didn't break from contradiction, it expanded. This is the paradox of awakening. Before you lived in an either-or reality. You were either optimistic or pessimistic, logical or intuitive, spiritual or material. After the transcendent function activates you, become all of these at once. You are no longer bound to the narrow lanes of identity. You become what Jung called a living paradox. This paradox shows itself everywhere. You may find yourself deeply committed to a relationship, yet simultaneously detached from its outcome. You may hold absolute conviction in a cause while recognizing the truth in its opposite. To the unconscious mind of society, you seem inconsistent, even hypocritical. But you are not confused. You are comprehensive. The mind of awakening does not collapse contradictions into tidy resolutions. It contains them, lives them, and allows them to generate wisdom. This is why awakened individuals often appear strange to others. They cannot be recruited into arguments that demand sides. They cannot be pulled into dramas that require a villain and a victim. They cannot be enslaved by politics that insists on rigid ideologies. They see that each perspective holds both wisdom and blindness, both truth and shadow. And so, paradox becomes their way of life. Here lies the result. This expansion of consciousness makes you psychologically unemployable in systems that rely on blind allegiance. You no longer fit the molds that once defined you. You are too awake for the games of division, too vast for the comfort of certainty. Awakening makes you incomprehensible to the linear mind, but radiant to those who recognize the deeper truth. The lesson is this: the transcendent function is not an escape from contradiction, but a surrender to it. Awakening demands that you hold grief and joy, despair and hope, shadow and light, not as enemies, but as companions. And in doing so, you discover that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. So, now I must ask you, have you ever felt both sides of an experience so intensely that they refuse to cancel each other out? Have you ever been both broken and whole, both devastated and grateful, both powerless and free? If so, then the paradox has already begun to open within you. And when the paradox awakens, your dreams can no longer remain ordinary. They become revelations. There comes a point in awakening when the boundary between waking life and dreaming dissolves. Jung discovered that for the awakened, dreams stop being random neural noise or wish fulfillment. They become transmissions from the self-communications, from the deepest layers of the psyche. You do not merely dream, you are taught. Imagine closing your eyes and entering a realm where you are not only the dreamer, but the dream itself, and also the witness observing it all. The dream becomes a classroom. A voice you cannot see speaks truths you remember word for word upon waking. Landscapes unfold that feel more like home than anywhere you have ever known. This is not fantasy. Jung documented this in his Red Book recording visions that guided his entire life's work. He wrote, "My dreams ceased to be dreams and became visions, not hallucinations of a disturbed mind, but communications from depths of the psyche." Consider the story of a businessman with no spiritual background. He began to dream conversations that unfolded days later, word for word, detail by detail. He dreamed of a phone call announcing his father's heart attack 3 days before it happened. He dreamed of a conversation with his employer about a promotion, down to the color of the man's tie 1 week before it occurred. When he awoke, he knew he was not predicting the future. He was remembering it from his dreams. These are prophetic dreams, markers of awakening that reveal time is not what we think. But there is something even more profound: the big dream. These are not images to be analyzed. They are initiations that transform you at the cellular level. In a big dream, you might die and be reborn. Wake up feeling you have crossed a threshold no waking experience could ever provide. You might encounter luminous beings whose presence heals you without words, or archetypal figures so vast that seeing them alters your entire understanding of existence. When you awaken from such dreams, you are no longer the same. You have been changed not metaphorically, but literally. And yet here lies the burden. These dreams are nearly impossible to communicate. You can describe them in words, but the essence cannot be transmitted. It is like trying to explain color to someone who has never seen. You see the blank stares, the polite nods, the quiet disbelief. People think you are exaggerating or hallucinating. They cannot grasp that these are not symbols for your waking life, but realities more real than waking life itself. This isolation deepens. Your dream life begins to feel richer than your daily existence. You find yourself longing for night, not as rest, but as reunion with the self, with a depth of reality unavailable to ordinary consciousness. Jung understood this when he said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." For the awakened dreaming becomes a form of awakening. The result of this third sign is irreversible. You can no longer dismiss your dreams as trivial. They become a sacred dialogue, shaping choices, warning of danger, offering solutions. The unconscious ceases to be hidden. It becomes your teacher. And the lesson is clear. Awakening transforms dreams into revelations and revelations into guidance. The question is this: have you ever dreamed something that later unfolded exactly as you saw it? Have you ever woken from a dream knowing that you had been initiated into a truth too deep to explain? If so, then your unconscious has already begun to reveal itself as your most profound ally. And when dreams reveal the self, the ego can no longer remain untouched. It must be restructured. There is no experience more shattering and liberating than the defeat of the ego. Jung wrote, "The experience of the self is always a defeat for the ego. Yet this defeat is not destruction, it is revelation." You awaken to the realization that the ego, the personality you once thought was the center of existence, is not the CEO of your life. It is middle management. Something greater has always been directing the play. Imagine sitting in a conversation. You are fully engaged, speaking, laughing, gesturing. Yet at the same time, you are watching yourself from a second vantage point, aware of your emotions rising, aware of the old patterns replaying. And in that moment, you are given a choice: to act them out or to step out of them. You are no longer a puppet of your impulses. You are both actor and audience drop in ocean simultaneously. Jung's patients describe this as a split-screen existence. On one side, the personal self with its history, preferences, and flaws. On the other, an impersonal vastness, infinite awareness that sees the entire life unfolding like a movie. Neither screen is more real than the other. Both are true, both are you. This is the relativization of the ego. It is the beginning of psychological freedom. But the ego does not surrender quietly. It resists, inflates, pretends to own what belongs to the self. After glimpsing infinite consciousness, it whispers, "I am enlightened. I am special. I am beyond others." This is ego inflation, and it is inevitable. But the universe always responds with compensation. You stumble. You make a foolish mistake. You act out your shadow in embarrassing ways. One moment you channel wisdom, the next you cannot remember where you left your keys. These humiliations are not failures. They are medicine reminders that you are both infinite and ordinary, both vast and small. Awakening is not about eliminating the ego, but relativizing it. The result of this restructuring is paradoxical. You become deeply confident, yet genuinely humble, powerful, yet surrendered, knowing, yet innocent. You realize you are someone and no one at once. And this balance is not static. It is a dance, an ongoing negotiation between ego and self. Every moment becomes an opportunity to choose alignment with the greater wholeness or collapse back into identification with the small self. The lesson is this: awakening destroys the ego's monopoly, not the ego itself. You still need your ego to navigate the human world, to pay bills, to form sentences, to maintain relationships. But you are no longer enslaved by it. You live as both person and presence, both role and reality. The ego is dethroned, not erased. And this dethroning is what liberates you to live as both drop and ocean. So, I must ask you now, have you ever felt yourself observing your own reactions, choosing in real time, whether to act them out or let them dissolve? Have you ever sensed a vast awareness watching through your eyes? Aware of your life as a fleeting moment in eternity? If so, you have already begun to experience the humbling of the ego. And when the ego bows to the self, life itself reveals its mythic dimension. What if your life is not merely personal, but mythological? Jung discovered that awakening reveals this strange truth. You are not only living as an individual with private struggles, you are enacting universal patterns that stretch back to the beginning of humanity. These patterns are what Jung called archetypes, forces so ancient and impersonal that they shape every story we tell and every life we live. To awaken is to realize you are both a person and a myth. Imagine losing your job. On the surface, it is unemployment, a financial crisis, a personal setback. But at the mythic level, it is an initiation, the death of one role and the rebirth of another. The collapse of security is not only an accident, it is the hero's journey, the confrontation with the dragon, the descent into the underworld before the return with treasure. Imagine a painful breakup. At the personal level, it is heartbreak, disappointment, conflict. But at the archetypal level, it is the sacred marriage and its dissolution, the eternal tension between masculine and feminine principles playing out through two human beings. The myth does not erase the pain, it reveals its meaning. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But who you truly are is not just your ego's story. It is also the myth that has chosen you. One of Jung's patients described it this way: "I feel as if I am living in two movies at once. One is my daily life with work relationships and ordinary problems. The other is an eternal drama where I am playing out humanity's deepest patterns." This is archetypal awareness. You begin to recognize that your difficult mother is not only your mother, she is the dark mother archetype, the devouring and nurturing force that has shaped mythologies for millennia. You see that your own ambitions are not only your desires. They are expressions of the hero archetype striving for conquest and growth. You notice that in moments of crisis, archetypal energies rise within you. The warrior, when injustice appears. The healer, when someone suffers. The teacher, when wisdom must be shared. These forces do not belong to you. They move through you, constellating your psyche, using you as their instrument. And when you awaken to this mythological dimension, life changes. You stop seeing your struggles as meaningless accidents. You begin to recognize them as chapters in a myth far greater than yourself. The result is both humbling and empowering. You realize you are an actor on a stage you did not design, but you are also the stage itself. Your personal story becomes transparent, revealing the eternal forces behind it. This mythic vision brings compassion. You begin to see others not only as individuals, but as characters caught in archetypal dramas. You recognize the tyrant possessed by power, the victim trapped in helplessness, the lover consumed by longing. You see that human conflict is not only personal, but archetypal ancient patterns clashing through temporary forms. The lesson is profound. To live mythologically is to live in two dimensions at once, the personal and the universal. It means discovering that your soul carries a personal myth, a story written in the language of archetypes that has been waiting to unfold since your birth. And so, I must ask you now, have you ever felt that your life events were strangely scripted, as if you were playing a role in a drama larger than yourself? Have you ever sensed that your grief, your battles, your love stories were not only yours, but belonged to humanity itself? If so, then, you have already begun to glimpse the myth you are truly living. And when this myth awakens, the purpose of your awakening finally begins to reveal itself. Awakening feels deeply personal, yet Jung insisted it serves a purpose far beyond the individual. Each sign of awakening, from synchronicity to paradox, from dreams to myth, is not a random anomaly. It is part of humanity's psychological evolution. The purpose is not merely your healing. It is the collective individuation of mankind. Jung saw awakening as a process where the self, long hidden in the unconscious, begins to reorganize as the human psyche. And when enough individuals awaken, the collective consciousness itself shifts. Your strange, isolating experiences are not private madness. They are symptoms of the next stage in human evolution. Imagine this. You begin noticing synchronicities everywhere, and you think it is only about you. But in truth, each moment of meaningful coincidence adds to the collective field of awareness, making it easier for others to perceive. You start holding paradoxes, grief and joy, despair and hope, and you think it is a burden only you must carry. But in truth, you are expanding the human capacity for complexity, pioneering a psyche vast enough to embrace contradictions without collapse. You dream visions that later unfold in waking life, and you think they are secrets too strange to tell. But in truth, they are glimpses into dimensions of time and psyche that will one day become common knowledge. Your ego humbles itself before the self, and you think it is your private struggle. But in truth, you are embodying the dance between personal and transpersonal that all of humanity must eventually learn. You recognize your life as myth, and you think it is your destiny alone. But in truth, you are enacting patterns that reveal the eternal drama of human existence. This is why Jung wrote, "The spiritual problem of modern man forces him to experience these things, not because he seeks them, but because consciousness itself is evolving." The chaos of modern life, the fragmentation, the meaninglessness, these are not mistakes. They are the conditions that awaken the dormant capacities of the psyche. Awakening is the psyche's immune response to collective crisis. And here lies the result. What feels like isolation is actually participation. You are not waking up for yourself alone. You are part of a larger movement, a tide of consciousness pushing humanity towards survival through evolution. Jung believed we are in a race between consciousness and catastrophe. Either enough individuals awaken to these higher capacities, or humanity remains trapped in unconscious bars that lead to destruction. The lesson is staggering. Your awakening is not selfish. It is service. Every time you trust synchronicity, every time you embrace paradox, every time you honor a dream, Every time you let the self guide the ego, every time you live mythically, you add to the sum total of consciousness available to the collective. You become a beacon, not by teaching or preaching, but simply by living. The awakened person radiates possibilities that others unconsciously absorb. You make the impossible slightly more possible for everyone. And so, I must ask you now, have you felt that your awakening, though lonely, carries a strange sense of responsibility? Have you wondered if your personal evolution is secretly serving something much larger than you? If so, then you are already touching the secret purpose of awakening. And this purpose leads inevitably to the greatest challenge of all, the confrontation with your own shadow. At the end of every awakening journey lies a threshold most would rather avoid. Jung warned, "The meeting with oneself is at first the meeting with one's own shadow. After the beauty of synchronicity, the vastness of paradox, the revelations of dreams, the humbling of ego, and the mythic sense of purpose, awakening turns inward and downward. The light you have gained makes the darkness visible. The shadow is everything you have denied, rejected, or disowned in yourself. It is the anger you repress, the envy. You conceal the fear you numb, the selfishness you excuse. It is also the unlived potentials, the creativity you buried, the passion you suppressed, the power you feared. To awaken fully, you must confront this darkness and embrace it as part of your wholeness. Imagine this. You experience profound synchronicities and feel chosen by the universe. Then suddenly you find yourself jealous, petty, resentful. The fall is humiliating. Or you dream of luminous beings, but also of monsters that terrify you. You realize the psyche does not give light without also revealing shadow. One of Jung's patients described it as walking through a labyrinth of mirrors, every reflection showing a distortion of the self you would rather not see. The result of shadow confrontation is often crisis. Relationships break under the weight of honesty. Careers collapse when you refuse to keep playing the false role. Identities dissolve when you admit what you truly are. Awakening without shadow integration is spiritual inflation. You float into light and deny your darkness, but the repressed shadow eventually erupts with devastating consequences. Jung insisted that individuation, the true goal of awakening, is not perfection, but wholeness. It is becoming both angel and demon, both creator and destroyer, both love and rage. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your missing half. To embrace it is to step into authentic power, grounded wisdom, and true compassion. The lesson is that awakening is not escape, it is incarnation. To meet the shadow is to become fully human, not just spiritual. You descend into the underworld of your own psyche so that your light can shine without distortion. And here is the paradox. The more you accept your shadow, the less power it has to control you. The monster you face becomes an ally. The fear you confront becomes strength. The darkness you embrace becomes the soil in which your light takes root. This is the final initiation. To awaken is to become whole. So, I must ask you now, have you encountered aspects of yourself that frightened or shamed you only to realize they were part of your deeper truth? Have you felt the weight of your own darkness pressing in as your light grew brighter? If so, you have already begun the most important work of all. Awakening is not the end of struggle, but the beginning of a lifelong integration. And from this integration emerges the true gift, a life that radiates consciousness, not because it denies shadow, but because it has embraced it. We have walked through the 5 signs of awakening: synchronicity, paradox, dreams, ego transformation, and mythic living, leading to the secret purpose of evolution and the ultimate confrontation with the shadow. From these stories, we have seen that awakening is not madness, but metamorphosis. The privilege of consciousness is also its burden, but it is the path toward becoming whole. So, I leave you with this question. Will you turn away from your shadow, or will you walk through it and emerge fully awake? If you are ready, then your journey has only just begun. We have traveled through the 5 signs of spiritual awakening. Carl Jung identified synchronicities that reveal a hidden order, paradoxes that expand the mind, dreams that become revelations, the humbling of the ego before the self, and the recognition that your life is both personal and mythological. We have seen that these experiences are not symptoms of madness, but evidence of metamorphosis. Awakening is not about escaping the human condition, but embracing its fullness, light and shadow, conscious and unconscious, finite and infinite. Jung believed these signs were not only personal milestones, but steps in humanity's collective evolution. Each awakened individual becomes a beacon carrying light into the darkness, not only for themselves, but for all. The greatest truth is this: awakening does not separate you from humanity, it unites you more deeply with it. You are not awakening for yourself alone, you are awakening for all of us. So now I invite you to reflect. Which of these 5 signs has touched your life most intensely? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story may be the confirmation someone else needs to trust their own awakening. If this journey resonated with you, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because what lies ahead will take us even deeper into Jung's map of the soul. Thank you for walking this path with me. Remember, the meeting with oneself begins with the shadow, but beyond the shadow lies a new definition of what it means to be human. This is only the beginning.